Have you ever noticed how some people, even over 60, seem to have a quiet energy, a sparkle in their eyes, a subtle strength that impresses? They don't spend their time in gyms, they don't follow restrictive diets, and they certainly don't take medication. Yet, they walk lightly, have the energy for daily tasks, and a cardiovascular health that surprises even doctors. The secret? It's far from luck. And no, it's not just genetics. Behind this vigor are often daily habits, simple, quiet, and even shocking, that make all the difference for your heart. These habits don't appear in the news, no one teaches them in school, and many people only discover them when it's too late. But today you'll learn about 7 of these surprising habits that have helped men and women over 60 keep their hearts strong, their blood flowing smoothly, and their lives pulsing with intensity, all without relying solely on medication. If this content has already touched you in some way, take advantage now. Like this video, share it with someone who also deserves this chance, and comment below from which city and age you're watching. This is the kind of information that can save lives, and together we can make it reach those who need it most. Now let's begin. The first thing we need to understand is that the heart rarely gives clear warnings that it's about to fail. It doesn't scream, it doesn't cry for help with sirens, it whispers, and these whispers often manifest as unusual fatigue, difficulty climbing stairs, swollen feet, excessively light or restless sleep, or even constant unexplained irritation. Many attribute this to the weight of age, but in reality, they are warnings. Small signs that something inside us needs attention. This is what happened to Roberto, 66, and Anna, 70. Different stories, but similar symptoms. They both led relatively active lives. Roberto always enjoyed tending the yard, and Anna loved to dance. But over time, they began to notice an unexplained decline in energy. They felt more sleepy, more achy, and less inclined to go out. Roberto thought it was just old man fatigue, as he put it. Anne thought she was just settling in. But by chance, during a routine checkup, Anna's cardiologist identified worrying blood pressure levels, while Roberto's identified subtle changes in his heart rhythm. Nothing alarming at first glance, but the alarm bells were ringing. They could have continued to ignore the signs until something more serious happened. But they decided to investigate, ask questions, understand, and above all, change. And that's when they discovered the power of small actions. The first change they made was at the start of the day. Instead of waking up and immediately connecting with the news, cell phone, television, or worries, they began taking the first few minutes of the morning just to breathe. It may seem insignificant, but starting the day with calm and silence has a direct impact on regulating the nervous system. And when the nervous system is in balance, the heart feels it. Heart rate stabilizes, blood pressure regulates, and the body enters a state of preparedness, not alarm. This simple habit, waking up and breathing deeply for 5 minutes with your eyes closed, feeling your body, made a real difference. Anna stopped waking up with a headache. Roberto started sleeping better at night simply by starting the day better. Another point they both adopted was staying hydrated early in the morning. Drinking water first thing in the morning helps cleanse the digestive system, improves kidney function, and, most importantly, reduces blood viscosity. This reduces the risk of clots and improves circulation, essential for those who want to keep their heart healthy and avoid blood pressure spikes. Anna added a few drops of lemon to the warm water, not only for its flavor, but also for its mild alkalizing and antioxidant properties that help combat silent inflammation. They also began to value the way they felt while eating, chewing carefully, truly savoring, and eating slowly. This habit, which may seem silly to those who live in a rush, was largely responsible for improved digestion and anxiety control. And we know how much anxiety, silent, chronic, wears down the heart day after day. But perhaps the most surprising habit adopted by both was recording gratitude. You don't need to be religious, spiritual, or a follower of any philosophy. It's a simple exercise. Before bed, grab a pen and paper and write down one good thing that happened that day. It can be small, it can be simple. A smile you received, a memory that surfaced, the warm coffee that smelled like childhood. This practice, proven by studies in psychology and neuroscience, alters brain patterns, reduces nighttime stress, and improves deep sleep. Deep sleep is when the heart truly rests. It's during this time that it regenerates, stabilizes, and prepares for a new day. The combination of these habits, morning silence, mindful hydration, colorful eating, slow chewing, and nighttime gratitude, began to generate something more powerful than any single medication: consistency. And with it came transformation. If Anna and Roberto had previously felt ready to retire from life, they now felt there was still much to live for. They began walking again, dancing, and laughing more easily. Their tests, though still monitored, began to show progressive improvement. But above all, the change was internal. They began to listen to their bodies, respect their limits, and value each heartbeat. Roberto, who was never a fan of fussiness, as he put it, was surprised by the lightness he felt after a week of just this gesture. And this lightness was the impetus for the next step: rethinking his diet. Without strict diets or impossible rules, they did something more intuitive. They began to assemble their dishes by observing the colors. The focus wasn't on cutting out this or that, but on ensuring a rainbow on the plate. Carrots, kale, beets, broccoli, tomatoes, garlic, red onion. The more colorful and natural, the better. The colors represent different compounds that protect heart cells, fight bad cholesterol, balance blood sugar, and reduce arterial oxidation. They also began to value the way they felt while eating. Chewing carefully, truly savoring, and eating slowly. This habit, which may seem silly to those who live in a rush, was largely responsible for improved digestion and anxiety control. And we know how much anxiety, silent, chronic, wears down the heart day after day. But perhaps the most surprising habit adopted by both was recording gratitude. You don't need to be religious, spiritual, or a follower of any philosophy. It's a simple exercise. Before bed, grab a pen and paper and write down one good thing that happened that day. It can be small, it can be simple. A smile you received, a memory that surfaced, the warm coffee that smelled like childhood. This practice, proven by studies in psychology and neuroscience, alters brain patterns, reduces nighttime stress, and improves deep sleep. Deep sleep is when the heart truly rests. It's during this time that it regenerates, stabilizes, and prepares for a new day. The combination of these habits, morning silence, mindful hydration, colorful eating, slow chewing, and nighttime gratitude, began to generate something more powerful than any single medication: consistency, and with it came transformation. If Anna and Roberto had previously felt ready to retire from life, they now felt there was still much to live for. They began walking again, dancing, and laughing more easily. Their tests, though still monitored, began to show progressive improvement. But above all, the change was internal. They began to listen to their bodies, respect their limits, and value each heartbeat. And that, my friend, is the greatest gift anyone can give themselves after 60. It's not about defying age, it's about making peace with it, about accepting time as an ally, and about giving your heart everything it needs to keep beating with health, courage, and purpose. One of the biggest misconceptions about cardiovascular health is the idea that only major events cause real damage to the heart, like a heart attack, a stroke, or a serious arrhythmia. But the truth is that more often than not, the heart suffers silently, eroded by small, repeated oversights every day. And perhaps the most dangerous of these is a habit many people maintain without realizing it: an invisible sedentary lifestyle. This sedentary lifestyle isn't like the classic lying in bed all day. It's more sneaky. It happens when we spend hours sitting watching television, browsing social media, or even working, believing we're standing with purpose. The problem isn't rest, it's essential. The problem is excessive time without any kind of functional movement. And here comes a habit that has transformed the lives of many people over 60, the habit of intentionally moving every 2 hours. Roberto, the same gentleman we met in the previous chapter, adopted a simple rule that has helped him immensely. Every 2 hours, he gets up, walks for 5 minutes, goes up and down the garage steps 3 times, does some stretching, or simply moves his arms as if swimming. He calls this reminding the body that it's alive, and this reminder has a profound impact on cardiovascular health. Short, frequent, and conscious movements activate peripheral circulation, stimulate venous return, prevent blood stagnation in the legs, and prevent silent thrombosis or chronic venous insufficiency. Furthermore, this type of constant movement regulates metabolism, balances blood sugar levels, and reduces low-grade inflammation, a central factor in cardiovascular aging. Anna, for her part, decided to use alarms on her phone as gentle reminders. Every 2 hours, a soft sound plays, and she knows it's time to get up, stretch her body, stretch her neck, make circular movements with her arms, and roll her shoulders. Over time, this habit became automatic, and more than that, pleasurable. She noticed that by doing this, she felt less joint pain, slept better, and most importantly, felt more alive. But the surprising habit isn't just in the act of moving, it's in the awareness of the body during that movement. It's not about walking like a robot or standing up out of obligation. It's about awakening to one's own presence. About recognizing the miracle of standing with blood flowing, lungs working, and heart beating. This state of presence during movement activates a powerful connection between body and mind. And that's where another habit comes into play: guided breathing. It may seem simple, but many people don't breathe correctly. They spend the day taking shallow, hurried breaths using only the upper part of their lungs. This fuels stress, reduces blood oxygenation, and accelerates the heart rate. Anna learned to breathe deeply, inhaling through her nose for 4 seconds, holding it for 4 seconds, exhaling through her mouth for 4 seconds, and finally holding her breath for another 4 seconds. This exercise, called square breathing or box breathing, is used by health professionals, athletes, and even military forces to balance the nervous system and quickly reduce blood pressure. She began doing this in moments of irritation, anxiety, insomnia, and even before making difficult decisions. And in all these moments, her body thanked her. Her heartbeat slowed, muscle tension diminished, her mind cleared, and her heart felt safe again. But Roberto adapted this habit to his own style. Instead of following the exact cycles, he simply focused on inhaling deeply and exhaling slowly, always paying attention to the sound of his own breathing. Sometimes he did this while observing nature, gazing at the sky, or simply lying in silence. He noticed that, in these moments, something inside him reorganized. A peace that was difficult to explain emerged. And this peace, he says, tastes like a peaceful heart. But it doesn't stop there. Another habit that Anna and Roberto incorporated with surprising results was exposure to the sun. Yes, the old and powerful sun, often feared or avoided. Moderate and regular exposure to morning or late afternoon sun activates the production of vitamin D, essential for cardiovascular health. A deficiency in this vitamin is linked to increased systemic inflammation, elevated blood pressure, and a higher risk of heart disease. Roberto began tending small plants on the balcony and sunbathing every day for 15 minutes without sunglasses or glass barriers. Anna, for her part, walked around the block early in the morning before the heat set in. This contact with the sun, besides the physiological benefits, provided something even more valuable: a reconnection with life outside, with light, with the present. Together, these habits, intentional movement every 2 hours, conscious breathing, and exposure to sunlight, created a new rhythm of life. A more natural rhythm, more aligned with what the body truly needs, rather than what modern routines demand. And what we saw over time was a transformation that went far beyond the tests. Disposition increased, mood improved, thoughts became clearer, and hearts began to beat more confidently. Doctors noticed this in more regular heartbeats, more stable blood pressure, and reports of well-being. But more than the doctors, the protagonists of these changes themselves noticed something that cannot be measured with devices: the return of the joy of life. Because heart health at the end of the day is this: living with a light heart, and after 60, that's worth its weight in gold. There's a little talked about truth when it comes to the heart. It's not just what you eat that influences your cardiovascular health. It's also how you feel while eating, who you share the meal with, and what you carry inside you when you eat. Few people realize, but the heart is one of the organs most sensitive to the emotional environment. And that's why, in this chapter, we'll discuss something that may seem subjective, but has a direct effect on heart health: the quality of your emotional connections, the type of emotions you cultivate, and the presence or absence of meaningful connections in your daily life. Anna, for example, ate alone for many years. Even with children and friends, routine and life's ups and downs meant she ate in silence, in front of the television or her cell phone. At first, she didn't even notice. But over time, she began to feel a strange emptiness that didn't stem from hunger or physical loneliness. It was something emotional, hard to explain, as if food wasn't enough to nourish her. That's when she decided to change. Once a week, she started inviting a neighbor over for lunch. They cooked together, talked about life, laughed, sometimes even cried. And curiously, Anna realized that even eating less, she felt more satisfied, more nourished, and somehow more alive. This experience isn't just emotional, it's biological. Studies show that the presence of healthy emotional bonds significantly reduces levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, and increases the release of oxytocin, known as the bonding hormone, which has direct effects on lowering blood pressure and stabilizing heart rate. Roberto, for his part, had always been more reserved, but after losing his wife, he became even more withdrawn. Friends invited him to play dominoes or take a walk around the block, but he refused. He said he was tired. Until one Saturday, he gave in to an old friend's invitation. They went for a simple coffee at a neighborhood bakery. They stayed there for hours, laughing over old stories, talking about life, the changes, their children, and their losses. And upon returning home, Roberto noticed something surprising. His chest pain had disappeared. That mild depression he'd been carrying for weeks had simply vanished. This experience may seem like a coincidence, but it isn't. Repressed emotions, chronic loneliness, and social isolation are now considered risk factors as serious as high cholesterol or smoking. The heart needs people, exchange, connection, not necessarily many, but at least one person with whom it's possible to be true, laugh, vent, and share one's life. And here comes another transformative habit: intentionally cultivating moments of reconnection. It could be a visit, a phone call, a note left on the door, a sincere good morning to a neighbor. Small gestures, repeated frequently, that reinforce the sense of belonging. And when a person feels part of something, the heart responds. Because the heart, at its core, is a relational organ. Anna began sending messages of gratitude to people she had lost touch with. Roberto, who barely knew how to use a cell phone, relearned how to make voice calls and started calling his older brother once a week. These seemingly simple gestures became emotional pillars, and emotional pillars are like roots for the heart. They ground, stabilize, and strengthen. And another powerful insight they both discovered was the impact of music. Yes, music. Not just as a distraction or pastime, but as therapy. Anna created a playlist with songs that marked her youth and started listening to it while cooking. Roberto found in his old guitar a way to release his longing. In both cases, their heartbeats became more regular, their moods improved, and their minds cleared. And this is also supported by science. Music therapy is already recognized as an effective complementary practice in the treatment of hypertension and anxiety. in addition to improving the quality of life of patients with chronic heart problems. And speaking of a clear mind, it's impossible to ignore the role of mental health in heart function. Constant worry, mental rumination, and silent anguish activate the sympathetic nervous system, the system responsible for preparing the body for stress by increasing heart rate, constricting blood vessels, and releasing adrenaline. This constant state of alert over the years takes a serious toll on the heart. Therefore, an extremely beneficial habit adopted by Anna and Roberto was the mindful pause. Unlike simply resting, the mindful pause consists of stopping, closing your eyes for 5 minutes, feeling your body, observing your breath without judgment. Simply being there, in the now. This practice slows mental rhythm, lowers anxiety levels, and allows the heart to return to a state of physiological rest, which is literally what it needs to protect itself. Roberto adopted this habit after meals, Anna before bed, each in their own way, but both with the same result: greater emotional lightness, more clarity, less internal tension. And the most incredible thing is that over time, even their thoughts began to change. Less focus on illness, less fear of the future, more presence in the present. All of this created a new landscape, a landscape where the heart no longer beat out of obligation, but with purpose, where the body ceased to be merely an automatic mechanism and became a respected dwelling, where life ceased to be measured in years and began to be felt in moments, because a strong heart after 60 isn't one that resists everything. It's one that feels, that adapts, that nourishes itself with connections, with truth, with presence, and above all, it's one that finds a new rhythm, a more human, more generous rhythm, a rhythm that even in silence transforms everything around it. There's something deeply sacred and yet deeply underappreciated about the way we sleep. For many people over 60, sleep has become a struggle. Waking up in the middle of the night, difficulty falling asleep, light sleep, restless dreams, feeling tired upon waking. All of this is seen as normal for aging, but the truth is none of this is actually normal. It's common, yes, but not healthy. And the more time passes, the more the heart pays the price for these sleepless nights. Sleep is the time when the heart finally finds peace. It's during deep sleep that heartbeats stabilize, blood pressure naturally drops, chronic inflammation decreases, recovery hormones are produced, and the entire body reorganizes itself internally. Getting good sleep isn't a luxury, it's a vital necessity, especially for those who want to keep their hearts strong after 60. Roberto, for example, spent years believing his sleep was inherently bad. He said he slept lightly, that he woke at the slightest noise, that he had always been a sensitive sleeper. But he didn't realize that, in fact, his nighttime habits completely sabotaged his ability to truly rest, eating late, keeping the lights on until the last minute before bed, having a television in the bedroom, a cell phone next to the bed. All of this seemed harmless, but it fueled a constant state of alert in his brain. Anna was in a similar situation. As the years went by, she began having trouble staying asleep during the night. She would wake up at 3 or 4 a.m. and couldn't get back to sleep. For a long time, she used mild tranquilizers and even stronger medications, but she would wake up groggy and unwell, as if her body had slept, but her soul hadn't. It wasn't until they both began investigating more deeply that they discovered the power of so-called sleep hygiene, a set of practices that help the body recognize when it's time to rest. These aren't rigid rules, but rather rituals that prepare the body for deep restorative sleep. But what surprised them both most was the impact of body temperature. The body needs to cool slightly to initiate deep sleep. Hot baths at night paradoxically help this process. The heat dilates the blood vessels, and after the bath, the body naturally cools down. Roberto started taking hot baths before bed. Anna, chamomile tea with fresh leaves and a little lavender. And here's something few people know. During deep sleep, the heart performs a kind of sweep of the body. It communicates with the lymphatic system, stimulates the production of anti-inflammatory hormones, and most importantly, regulates the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the center that controls stress. Without deep sleep, this axis silently collapses, and this collapse is what causes many people to live all day in a state of alert, with a racing heart, a restless mind, and a tense body. Anna noticed that after 3 weeks of better sleep, her blood pressure stabilized remarkably. Roberto, who suffered from short episodes of mild arrhythmia, saw his symptoms practically disappear. No miracle happened. No new medication was introduced. Only sleep, the old wise sleep, returned to where it should never have left. Another curious habit they both adopted was respecting their bodies' schedules. Each found their own biological clock. Roberto went to bed early and woke up early. Anna slept a little later, but insisted on waking up with natural light. The secret isn't copying schedules, but following a rhythm, your own rhythm. Going to sleep and waking up at the same times, even on weekends, helps the body regulate itself, reduces unbalanced cortisol production, and strengthens the heart. And when sleep is organized, everything changes. Appetite improves, memory clears, energy returns, mood stabilizes, and the heart is grateful. Because a well-rested heart is a stronger heart, a heart that doesn't need to beat in despair, one that beats in peace. Anna even said in one of her nighttime journal entries that rediscovering sleep was like rediscovering a piece of herself that had been lost. Roberto, in his simple way, said that sleeping well is like being carried in life's arms. And perhaps it is, because sleep is just that, a surrender, a moment of trust in the body, in time, in existence. And trust, even after so many struggles, is the greatest gift we can give our hearts. After everything we've seen so far about silence, breathing, mindful movement, colorful eating, restorative sleep, and emotional bonds, perhaps a question remains: what sustains all of this when life gets tough? When a diagnosis, a loss, a disappointment, or simply the weight of the years arrives? What habit truly keeps the heart strong even on difficult days? The answer, though simple, is also the most powerful: the habit of believing. Yes, believe. Have faith in something greater. In yourself, in life, in starting over, in recovery. This habit, which has neither smell nor color, is what sustains thousands of hearts that could have stopped, but didn't. Because believing changes everything. It changes the body's biochemistry, it changes the mind's focus, it changes the heart's rhythm. Roberto, after a stressful doctor's appointment where he was told he might need a heart procedure, arrived home shaken. But instead of giving in to fear, he did something he hadn't done in years. He wrote a letter to himself. A letter of courage. He wrote that he wanted to live longer, that he wanted to see his grandchildren grow up, that he wanted to be able to walk without pain, feel the wind on his face, laugh at the little things. When he finished the letter, he cried. But in those tears there was strength, and something inside him began to change. Anna, upon discovering a benign lump in her breast, experienced days of anxiety. But she decided she didn't want to let it dominate her thoughts. So she resumed something she'd done when she was young: drawing. She grabbed colored pencils, simple sheets of paper, and began sketching flowers. Every day. And as she drew, her heart felt calmer. Her previously accelerated heartbeat seemed to dance to a different rhythm. It wasn't the drawing that healed. It was the act of believing that there was still beauty, lightness, and hope. And science confirms what many already know deep down: people who cultivate faith, whether religious, spiritual, or emotional, live longer. They have fewer cardiac events, better post-surgery recovery, and greater adherence to healthy habits, because faith generates purpose, and the heart loves purpose. It needs to know why it's beating. And here's a secret you may never have heard: the heart doesn't beat in a vacuum. It beats in response to what you feel, to what you dream, to what you project, to what you desire to experience. Therefore, cultivating a daily habit of gratitude, positive visualization, or simply speaking out loud what you want to experience, even if it seems distant, is one of the most powerful acts of heart care. Anna made it a habit to look in the mirror every day and say, "Today I am stronger than yesterday." Roberto, upon waking, would place his hand on his chest and say, "Thank you for another day." These gestures, these small rituals, cost nothing, but they are worth everything. And this brings us to the most beautiful point of this entire journey, understanding that caring for your heart is an act of love. Love for yourself, love for life, love for the people who are still around, and love above all for the time you still have. Because time is the greatest treasure anyone can receive, and using it with presence, with wisdom, with joy, is the most elegant way to give back. Today, after incorporating these habits, Anna and Roberto remain steadfast, not because they will never face challenges again, but because they now know how to face them with greater balance, clarity, and, most importantly, lightness. They learned that the secret is not in avoiding what hurts, but in strengthening what sustains, and what sustains is the heart. So if you've made it this far, perhaps something inside you has also been touched. Maybe you've already felt it's time to change, to start, to prioritize yourself. Maybe you already know deep down that you don't need to wait for a scare, an abnormal test result, or extreme fatigue to take care of what really matters. You can start now, with small steps, with deeper breaths, with water early in the morning, with more silence, with less haste, with more presence. And if this video inspired you in any way, if anything here resonated with you, then I invite you to be part of this chain of transformation. Like this video right now, share it with someone you love, someone you want to see well, with a strong heart. And comment below how old you are and what city you're watching from. Let's create a community of mature, conscious people determined to live with greater health, dignity, and energy. Because after 60, the best chapter of life can still be written. And it begins now, with a strong, light, and awake heart. See you in the next video.